Tonight on The Buzz, Sue Lawson is an award-winning Chicago-based editor, and recently she associate produced and edited a documentary on guerrilla film preservation called Real Heroes. Tonight, she tells us how to save our films. Next, Maxim Yago is an award-winning director who's thinking about the future of media. We're moving to 4K, but what about 8K, and what's the relevance of more colors or HDR? Tonight, Maxim takes us into the future. Next, filmmaker Max Votolato was born in London, but now he lives in LA. His latest documentary is called Freeway City, which is the story of Gardenia, California, the one-time poker capital of the world. Tonight, we learn how he made it. All this plus a Buzz flashback, tech talk, and Randi Altman's perspective on the news. The Buzz starts now.
Tonight's digital production Buzz is brought to you by Otherworld Computing at MacSales.com and by Blackmagic Design at BlackMagicDesign.com.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
And welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for creative content creators covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Mike, cast your mind back into the dim reaches of time.
Okay, yes.
Do you remember the first show that you and I did together?
No. Do you?
Yep, I looked it up. I had to because...
Well, if I looked it up, I would remember.
Yeah, November 15th, 2007.
Oh, my gosh.
More than 8 years ago.
Oh, my gosh.
And
Seriously, 8 years ago?
8 years ago. And between the time that first show, by the way, my notes on the first show were rocky, but nobody died. So it was a little on the shaky side, technically.
Do you actually keep a diary, notes of every show that we do?
Well, we have notes. Clearly, we have notes on every show, but I don't keep a diary on it because I couldn't read it. We've had 434 shows since you and I started working together, November 15th, 434.
Wow.
We've done 1,736 interviews, and we've had 1,311 guests on the show.
Wow.
Since November 15th of 2007.
And I don't remember one of them.
It's a frightening thought, isn't it?
I'm still trying to figure out how to get to this place. No, that is a frightening thought, but that's an awesome amount of statistics.
And you think about it, we've done a new show every week, every year,
That's
for 8
not easy.
years. That's not easy.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of hard work, and you got to thank everybody around here, and you got to thank you. And congratulations on all this, because this has imparted a lot of wisdom to the world that this world needed to know.
Well, thank you. But it would not be as much fun if you weren't on the show.
You're damn right. And I'll try to remember this show.
Let's focus on the important stuff. Also, I want to remind you to subscribe to our free weekly show newsletter at digitalproductionbuzz.com. You can keep up with all of Mike's activities every issue, every week. It's an inside look at both the buzz and the lives that our co-hosts lead, plus quick links to all the different segments on the show. And best of all, every issue is free. We've got a really exciting show with some amazing guests. Mike and I will be back with Sue Lawson right after Randi Altman's perspective on the news.
This is Randi Altman's perspective.
Randi Altman has been writing about our industry for more than 20 years. In fact, she's the editor-in-chief of her own website called postperspective.com. And as always, it's wonderful, Randi, to have you back on the show. How you doing?
I'm good, Larry. How are you?
Well, it's getting closer and closer to the holidays, which means it's the awards season. And, man, you talk to everybody that's out for awards today. What are you hearing and what are you paying attention to?
Well, we've been covering some of the top directors for the last month or two, and what I've been noticing is, in terms of trends, is there really is no trend. I mean, we've got some pretty high-end directors on some films that were mentioned in the Golden Globe nominations and some of the other nominations that have been announced so far. So we've spoken to Danny Boyle and Ridley Scott and Todd Haynes and Todd Hooper, and we have Quentin Tarantino coming up and Spike Lee. So what I've been discovering is these guys are sort of all over the place in terms of who's shooting digital, who's shooting film, and who's shooting a combination of both. And it's been fairly interesting. And then they're all sort of debating on the post schedule as well. You've got someone like Ridley Scott who loves digital, just loves it, can't wait for the process to get even faster, and wants a faster post schedule. He did 25 weeks on The Martian, and he thought that was too long. So you've got a director like him, and then you've got a director like Quentin who really wants to take his time, wants to shoot 70 millimeter, and it's fun to watch.
Well, the other thing that I was impressed with, especially with the Golden Globes, because the Hollywood Foreign Press Association loves to throw out shocking nominations, is films that we thought would be heavily nominated, like The Martian, are totally ignored, and films that we weren't expecting to get nominated, like Spotlight, get a lot of attention. Are we seeing a shift away from traditional Hollywood movies and more of an emphasis on independence?
I think we've been seeing that the last couple of years, and they might be, Martian has a lot of visual effects. It's a very strong story as well, but they might be moving away from nominating those with visual effects and going more for, the Carol and the dramas, the personal dramas. So I'm not terribly surprised about that.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch because the award season runs now through March of next year, and there's going to be all kinds of conversations about who's ahead and who isn't, and we'll have you give us all the latest scoop in terms of what's happening behind the scenes. Randi, for people that want more information about you and your writing, what website can they go to?
They can visit postperspective.com.
Postperspective.com. Randi Altman, the editor-in-chief. Randi, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Larry.
To read more from Randi Altman, visit postperspective.com. Still to come on The Buzz. When you're working with media, one thing is essential. Your computer needs peak performance. However, when it comes to upgrading your Mac, there are so many different options to choose from that the process can be confusing. That's why Otherworld Computing carries the best upgrades that lets your computer performance and storage grow as your needs grow. Since 1988, OWC has become one of the most trusted names in quality hardware and comprehensive support to the worldwide computer industry. With an extensive online catalog of Mac, iPhone, and iPad enhancement products, as well as a dedicated team of knowledgeable experts providing first-rate tech support, OWC has everything you need to take your current system to the next level. Whether you need to maximize your system's memory, add blazing speed, or enhance reliability, look no further than the friendly experts at OWC. Learn more by visiting macsales.com today. That's macsales.com.
Sue Lawson is a Chicago-based editor specializing in narratives, documentaries, indie features, and trailers. Her clients include international recording artists, Fortune 500 corporations, and, of course, lots and lots of independent filmmakers. Hello, Sue. Welcome back.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
Oh,
Hi, Sue.
Mike and I have been looking forward to this.
Michael's there too.
I'm here.
My heart.
I know. It's so great to talk to you and see you.
You too.
You know, I was just thinking, Sue, you've been a long-time member of the Chicago Creative Pro User Group. What's the film and media community like around Chicago?
It's actually getting a lot stronger these days. We were a flyover zone for a while, but it's coming back, which is great.
Well, now you have, 3 primetime series that are filming in Chicago? Like Chicago Med, Chicago Police, or Chicago something.
Fire, Chicago CSI.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really stepped up. So there's a lot of television shows shooting in Chicago right now.
It's awesome. It's coming back, baby. What can I say?
Well, I was just wondering, where's the bulk of the business? Is it in corporate media, traditional media like you and Mike were just talking about, or independent films?
For Chicago, I still think that the bulk of it is in corporate, which is good.
Yeah.
So corporate and agency stuff, that's probably really the hub of it all. But the independent scene is blossoming here. It's getting stronger, so that's a good thing.
Back when I was an actor,
That
I used
long
to do,
ago?
yes, that was
Back when.
that was way back. But we used to do a lot of commercials in Chicago. I mean, Chicago was like the commercial capital of. There was New York, and then there was Chicago, and so we used to go back to Chicago to film a lot of commercials. And sometimes they come out to L.A., but Chicago had all these great big agencies, so it was a great place to film.
And great architecture.
And great architecture.
Fabulous architecture. Obviously, Michael, what we need is for you to come back to Chicago so we can have more of that commercial work.
Absolutely.
You know, you went to L.A., that's what happened.
I know. That's what happens.
Don't stroke his ego any more than it is already, because he's unlivable at that point.
Merry Christmas. Okay. All right.
Merry Christmas.
You know, Sue, what caught my attention recently was an announcement that you've been working on a documentary called Real Heroes, Saving Film One Frame at a Time. And while I know Mike would like to talk about making commercials in Chicago just to get you to smile, tell us about this documentary, because this whole idea of archiving and preservation is one that I think all of us are overlooking. So tell us what that show is about.
It is absolutely awesome. I kind of stumbled into it. I know the filmmakers. I've worked with them on a couple of other projects. The documentary itself, and they have been working on this for like 12 years so far. But it started out as like a quirky little story about film preservationists, film collectors, the people who have day jobs doing something else somewhere else, most of them still in the film industry. But it really evolved over time into something much bigger than what they thought it was going to be. And fortunately, that's when I got involved. So it's awesome that way. But some of the things that I have found so interesting about that was like the FBI actually had, I don't want to call it a witch hunt, just in case I'm on their list, and my broom's in the closet.
Well, you will be after this show.
That's right. I'll just tell them I know you guys, and I'll be fine.
There's no question. That'll get you out.
But they had actually really done like this witch hunt to get people who were, or to go after people who were collecting films. I think one of the most notable ones was Roddy McDowell. So it's like, really? And what they did about trying to just destroy films, and I understand the copyright issues. If you don't own the copyright, you don't own the film, you don't own that print. But so much of our cultural heritage has just been destroyed because there wasn't room for it, and people didn't think it was necessary to save these things. So it's kind of near and dear, I think, to all of our hearts in the industry.
That's part of why we have such a sense of triumph when we read about the restoration of a film from the 30s and 40s, that we only are able to restore a fraction of our film history.
Oh, exactly.
So what was the film about?
The film is about, or will be about, because it's still in the post-production. In fact, it just recently entered the post-production side of things after, as I said, about 12 years of interviews that they've been conducting. So,
but is it about the process of preserving film, or is it about the people who are preserving film, or is it about the films that have been preserved? What point of view does it take?
It is about the people who are preserving the films, and it is not so much about the process of preserving them, but the process that these people are going through to find just those missing frames, to go ahead and restore the films. I think one of the most notable people was Kevin Brownlow, who actually got a Special Academy Award for restoration, I want to say it was of Napoleon, which came out in way before my time.
It was early 1900s, yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. So it is about the people and their quest to go ahead and preserve films, and about some of the films themselves. There's a lot of films that are in the public domain, if you can find them now, and a lot of these collectors are nice enough to share the films, and some of the films, at least clips of the films, are going to be in this project as well. So,
how do people determine which films to preserve?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know if there's a
Yeah.
great answer to that, because in a perfect world, they would all be preserved.
Yeah. And you know what the great thing is, at least in 2015 versus say 2000, to preserve films now, with all the technical equipment we have right now, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than it was just 15 years ago. So we can take a lot of these films that were sort of, should we preserve it or should we not preserve it? And it's really not going to cost us that much. It's going to cost us that much in time is what it's going to cost us. Yeah.
Exactly. And to be able to preserve them in their original state, in the film state, not just in the
That's where
digital
you need the
state.
people. That's where the people come in. And
That's where the people and the money comes in as well, because that is a costlier process. But obviously, these little the people who are profiled in this piece, and some of them are pretty notable. I mean, as I said, Kevin Brownlow, Joe Dante, Leonard Maltin. I mean, there are a number of named people in this, and people who are just really known within the film collector and film preservation world as well. But they obviously are not getting the same press that like Scorsese is, who obviously is at the forefront of this. He and Coppola, and I think Clint Eastwood's on the board of directors for the film group as well. It's amazing, and I think people understand this is something that we almost have to do, because we lose it otherwise. And film is hard to preserve, and it's hard to keep. It's a very volatile medium. You know, just being exposed to air is going to go ahead and poof, it's gone.
Of the interviews that you've heard, because you were involved both as an associate producer and will be working with the editorial crew, of the interviews that you've heard, which one stands out the most to you and why?
I actually can't choose. It depends on, I was going to say it depends on the day, but I think so many of them are truly phenomenal. I think one of the things that caught me first were the interviews where they delved into the FBI kind of going on this hunt for people and how paranoid people were about this. A couple of people who were in the film actually have asked not to be in it now because they are still concerned about repercussions from the government.
Wow.
And it's like, really, after all these years, you're still concerned about that. So it's an interesting journey that we're taking.
What method of preservation are your guerrilla preservationists using? How are they keeping the film safe?
They're actually going ahead and they're restoring film itself, and they're having more film prints made. This particular project, although it was shot on digital, and even tape. I mean, if you think 12 years ago, began its world in tape. But they are looking at doing film outs on this as well, because they are true preservationists, and they truly believe in the beauty and the pristine quality of film, even when it's all scratchy and but there's something magical.
Just don't run it through a projector. just keep it in the can.
Never show it.
Just never show it. Yeah, it'll be
get close here.
Exactly.
Now, you're going to be the supervising editor on this, and they've been shooting for 12 years. You must have a plethora of, I work in that word as often as I can, a plethora
Let me look that up, Larry.
of formats. What's your workflow? How are you getting all this stuff organized, and how are you going to edit it?
Well, first of all, as you said, organization is the key. They have a ton of stuff, and they're not done. They still have a few more interviews that they would like to go ahead and get. But it's the basic format of determining what it is you have, what the different formats are. I categorize all of those. And then we decide what I actually want to do is let's get the cut made first, and then we'll go ahead and worry about transcoding things as opposed to transcoding 12 years worth of material. Let's kind of work a little differently with that. Storage, to me, is probably the biggest thing that we have to worry about at this time, because there's so much. And I like having things neat and tidy and organized. But between archival footage itself, between all of the interviews that they've done, all the B-roll, of course, that goes along with everything, it's a lot.
So how are you organizing it? Are you using a digital asset manager or pads of paper, or what?
I like to use, the old rock and chisel type of thing, from the Flintstones era. I thought that would work really well, and it's pretty indestructible as long as I don't drop it. Yeah, I'm big on doing digital asset management, backing things up again and again and again. And as far as keeping track of everything that we have, I'm still, I don't want to say a paper and pencil type of gal, but I still like things like, spreadsheets for those things. I like keeping track of things that way. And when I'm working with other people, I think that that's really a good way of doing things at this point.
So, although I keep trying to pin you down and you keep tap dancing around the issue, have you decided so are you going to use a digital asset manager? And if so, which one?
Use FileMaker Pro. That's what you would love.
You think that would be the one that I should go with, Michael?
Absolutely. That's what Walter Murch goes with. So you might as well go with it too.
Might as well then. I really thought I could find something better than what he was
You and Walter
using.
like this. We all know that. Come on.
We're like this. We're like this.
So you're not going to answer the question.
I'm not answering that yet. Yeah.
Have you started editorial yet?
What was that?
Have you started editing yet?
They have started as far as getting the trailers done for additional financial resourcing, for their Indiegogo campaigns. To actually start on the project itself, we are at that point now. We are starting to pull everything together. It's a process, and I, as the supervising editor, for better or worse, my hands are tied on this one. I that's the frustrating part for me, because I just want to sit down and start moving things around, but that is not my role in this one yet.
Then what is your role? What does a supervising editor do?
My role on this particular project as the supervising editor is to keep them on track, keep them on budget, make sure that they're moving in the right direction, offer creative advice as well as to what's working, what's not working, how the story should be flowing. And truthfully, I'm touching things up as well as far as taking things out, making them look better. I'll probably be doing the final color work on it as well. Just because the experience that the current editor has on it, which are the filmmakers, their experience as editors is not, they don't have quite as much experience on a regular basis as somebody older.
We have
like
a live chat going, and Eric says that he's tired just thinking about the amount of work that's involved in editing this. So
no, seriously, there's a lot of work left.
That's why you're not editing it. But I mean, he's right. It is a lot of work, but frankly, it's nothing that we're not accustomed to. The last documentary I did, granted, it was only 5 years worth of footage and interviews. But there was a lot with that one. This one I will at least look at as being a little happier subject, because the last one was on sex trafficking. So that was a really tough one to do, and I'm the one who edited that one. That was a tough one to do. This one at least is happy. We're looking at movies.
Yeah.
As you've looked at this in a real short period of time, what have you learned as you've been involved with this process?
From what standpoint?
From something you didn't know before that you know now. Is there a workflow thing that you've learned, or is it pretty much the same thing, just a different subject?
I think it's the same thing, just a different subject.
And for
I honestly think one of the workflows that I like to kind of emulate, and it's online, everybody can see it anywhere, any place, but it's pretty much the standard workflow that they use with Frontline. Steve Audette was kind enough, I think, at one point to post that online, and it's just like, that's kind of our go-to Bible. Let's see what we can do about emulating that type of organization structure, because we've all been given projects that are just one hot mess when you get them.
True. Sue, thanks for joining us today. We'll keep track of this project in the future. And your website is?
Thanks, guys. My website is Chicago Edit. One word, CHICAGO, like the town that Michael needs to come back to.
I know.
Editlikewhatido.com. And the website for the movie is Real Heroes, REEL, realheroes.com, or realheroesfilm.com.
Thank you, Sue. The website's realheroes.com and chicagoedit.com, and Sue Lawson is involved with both. You take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Sue.
Still to come on The Buzz.
techniques at Blackmagic Design keep shaking up the industry. The new DaVinci Resolve 12 could be all the video editor you need. DaVinci Resolve 12 combines professional nonlinear video editing with the world's most advanced color corrector. So now you can edit, color correct, finish, and deliver all from one system. The brand new Blackmagic Video Assist is a high-resolution professional monitor and recorder that allows you to see a full-pixel 1080 image large enough so you can focus a DSLR camera accurately. And the new Ursa Mini cameras provide stunning quality with a 4.6K sensor and 15 stops of dynamic range. Compact, lightweight, and built from advanced magnesium alloy. When it comes to state-of-the-art technology, look first at Blackmagic Design at blackmagicdesign.com. That's blackmagicdesign.com. Maxime Yago is a film director, a screenwriter, and an author who splits his time between filmmaking and speaking as a futurist. He's a regular speaker at media technology conferences, film festivals, and events celebrating creativity. He's also the Chief Innovation Officer at filmdo.com and a mentor to new filmmakers. Hello, Maxim. Welcome back.
Hello. How are you? Good to see you.
It's good to hear your voice. You know, the last time we chatted was in October, talking about your James Bond spoof. But this time I want you to put your futurist hat on and share your thoughts on the trend toward ever higher resolution video. 4K is well entrenched in production. It's moving quickly into the consumer market. But is it likely to be successful?
Well, it's an interesting question, you know, that ultimately our job is to produce media for people to experience. And we're finding that most people can't tell the difference with a 4K screen compared to HD. Now, they can really, obviously, if it's SD. And so the TV manufacturers are trying to produce the marketing campaign, you know, that 4K is better, it's more pixels. But I was doing a little bit of the calculation, and actually, at enough of a distance from a screen, the picture is effectively retina anyway, you know. And this idea of retina is that you can't see individual pixels, right? So it's as high resolution as your eye can perceive. And this was a thing that Apple made a big fuss about when they came out with the retina screen for the iPhone. And now that's become a kind of a standard that we refer to. But I think that a lot of people are just going to skip 4K. HD is great. There's not that much 4K material available. But what I'm estimating is that we will, simply because we can, go for higher and higher resolution screens. If you look at frame rate, a lot of productions now, people are just shooting, they're overcranking at double frame rate because they can. It's extra data, but it just means you've got the potential to do slow-mo and you've got that flexibility in post. I'm seeing a lot of people shooting 4K, but they're not finishing in 4K at all. They're finishing and grading and working on their content in 2K or 1080, really, HD. But I have this theory that we will inevitably go for higher and higher resolution screens because the technology is there. But I think that we will top out in terms of distribution at 8K. And the reason I think we're going to top out at that level is that I worked out if you had a 20-foot wide screen, which is as big as any front room I can imagine anybody having a TV on, at 9 feet away, if you were working in 8K, it's retina. So even if you could go higher than that resolution, it would be fundamentally pointless. And really,
wait. Stop a second. In order for us to perceive an 8K image, it has to be viewed on a 20-foot screen.
Oh, no. I'm just saying that, no, of course, you can view it on anything, but it's pointless unless your nose is almost on the screen. Because, you know, the further away you are from the screen, the smaller the dots appear. So,
wait. I disagree with that. You're absolutely right. The further you get from the screen, the smaller the dots appear, or the smaller the screen.
Right.
So if you were looking at an 8K image on a 6-foot screen, are you going to see 8K?
No. I mean, you can't perceive that image resolution. That's the point. So, you know, if you had a 6-foot screen, I didn't do the calculation for 6 feet, but Goodness, I mean, if
The answer's
9 feet
the
is
answer's
enough,
2.5.
two
You
and a
have
half
to
feet.
2.5 feet away from the screen to see 8K resolution.
Thank you. There you go. So that sounds about right. If it's 9 foot at 20 feet.
Oh.
So if you are if you're pushing for higher and higher resolution media, then it's pointless. For acquisition, maybe if you're doing scientific work or if you're producing, Arri came out with a 65 mil frame sensor and then they produced this extremely high resolution, high megapixel video camera. And then when they were asked what's it for, they had to say, well, we don't know, but we thought some people could use for it. So I think that, we're always going to push for better and better acquisition. We want to accurately reproduce what's there. They humanize much better than cameras currently for perceiving real life. But in terms of distribution, NHK in Japan are now trialing an 8K 100 megabit AVC intra broadcast through satellite, just to see if they can. It's an enormous amount of data to put in the satellite bandwidth to distribute at that resolution. My point is that I think we will go for higher and higher resolution screens, but there is a biological limit to how high it's worth going. And if you just said on a 6-foot screen, it's 2.5 feet, it's literally pointless to broadcast anything higher than that, even if we could. And what I think is interesting about that is that we're reaching new limits in our technology that are not defined by the technology, but actually by our own biology. We're very unlikely to have bigger walls in our lounges. We're very unlikely to have bigger screens. So we're reaching a new threshold, a new limit, which I think is really interesting. What's much more interesting for the end user experience, I think, is HDR, broader color gamuts, that kind of stuff.
See, that's what I want to get to. I don't think once consumers see an HDR picture or a wider color gamut picture, they're going to be interested in resolution. They're going to be interested in the vibrancy and the emulation of real life that HDR provides that standard dynamic range can't begin to touch. And in fact, SD starts to look really good if you're looking at an HDR picture in a way that it never did when compared to HD. The difference between HD and HDR is just unbelievably toward HDR. Would you agree?
Well, I 100% agree. In fact, I'm really into the VR headset thing, and I think that's going to be a huge new medium. But you're not always going to want to put a headset on to watch the news or to see something in passing on a screen. Those are going to be a particular type of experience. I think that somebody said something interesting about HDR that it hadn't occurred to me before, which is, just for a frame of reference for people who aren't familiar with this high dynamic range idea, most TVs go to maybe 100 or 200 nits. I think that's one candle power per square meter of light. The new screen technology they're talking about in the home, they're looking at either going to 1,000 or 2,000 nits. So it's 10 or 20 times as bright as a regular TV. But what's important about it is the contrast range, right? So you still have very dark shadows and with detail in them and very bright parts of the image. And as someone said, when you see a bright image come on an HDR screen, you have a physiological reaction. Your pupil, what's the opposite of dilates? It shrinks. And so you feel that in your eyes. You feel a physical reaction to what's happening on the screen, which is something that we just haven't had before. We've had headaches from bad stereoscopic, but it's not quite the same thing. So I think this is absolutely the next step. It's relatively straightforward technology to implement, but then all of these things are. Ultimately, it comes down to whether you can, by the time you've paid for the R&D, manufacturing the technology isn't that hard. The question is, what do audiences really feel strongly about? And I'm with you. I think HDR is the next step. I think what will happen is we'll get HDR, we'll get these better color gamuts, we'll get all of that. And I think the manufacturers will just sort of sneak in, oh, by the way, it's UHD, or, it's 8K, it just will be. But that's years away. I think we're going to start to see HDR media very, very soon.
It was, interrupt here, you brought up VR. I had a demo today, earlier today in West LA of VR workflow. It was VR 10K workflow in post-production. You've seen the mounts where they have several GoPros or several Red cameras or whatever, and they're all shooting at the same time when they're actually filming entertainment for VR, and then you bring them, ingest them into your computer, and I saw 10K workflow. And of course, you're not going to you're going to acquire maybe 10K, but you're not going to distribute 10K. But it was really interesting, and yes, we can do it. It was incredible.
I love it. You know, I was speaking with Al Jazeera a while ago about their workflows, and they're really interested in the idea of having you just get a pole with one. You can 3D print a GoPro rig.
Yeah,
that perfectly aligns them. That's cheap to do now, and you can hire GoPros for $20, $25 a day. You get a 14 camera rig. You can do it stereoscopic if you want, or that takes some finishing. So you just plant one of these things in a location, and you can have a reporter in the scene talking to the camera and walking around the camera and saying, look over here, and you can look over there. And what they're saying is, if you get it cheap enough, as the front line of a war zone moves, you can put a satellite transmitter in one of these, leave it behind, and run. And as the
that's brilliant. That's actually that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, well, there's no reason, and you can get rigs. I think it's as few as, if you want to go around, you can do it with something like 4 cameras is enough. If you want to go a complete circle of image, but if you want a sphere, it's something like 7, and if you want to do it beautifully, it's with stereoscopic, it's 14. But imagine if your experience of locations around the world is VR like that. Now, I think it is happening, and it is coming, and we're working on the standardization right now. There's, as usual with new technologies, there's 15 different competing technologies. Sure. We have to pick one.
But do you think VR is going to be successful outside of games? Is the average viewer going to want to put on a headset to watch it?
Yes, I really do. If you look at HD, you know, that was driven by the PlayStation 2 supporting HD, and suddenly there was demand for TV, so the price went down. Well, it went up and then it went down. I think I cannot. I'm a gamer. You know, I've been a gamer since Pong, and as they say, and I cannot wait to play. Goodness me! I mean, another Last of Us. Oh, the list is, you know, Far Cry with a VR headset will be amazing. But I think that what that will do is pay for the standardization, pay for the reduction in price, pay for the conversion of this complex technology into a consumer technology, and then you know, they're talking about $200 or $300 for a really great VR headset. And, you know, yes, many people will have them in the home, but no, they won't use it for their general TV consumption. They're going to use it for that one movie that's been shot especially for it, or location stuff, or maybe it'll be, you know,
or real estate, or architecture, or, I mean, there's just an infinite amount of possibilities that's going to be used for, and you're going to see all of that at CES in Las Vegas in January.
And you know, there's 2 ways of doing VR, right? You've got one way where you sit the camera in position and the viewer can look in every direction, but they can't navigate. The other way, which is much more complex, is that you generate a 3D model of the environment, you acquire photo quality textures, put those in the 3D environment, and allow the viewer, as it were, to navigate the environment. And what we're beginning to see now, particularly in the development of games, but this is something that we can work towards fairly quickly now with film and TV as well, is that in the games, you'll have, effectively it's immersive theater. There'll be characters that'll be having a conversation, they'll be having a dialogue. You'll come across it as a player. And before you interact with these characters, you can just stand and watch. Sure. Or ignore them, or interact with them and change the narrative.
And they're actually doing that right now. And,
yep, they did it.
I just saw some of that just last week at 20th Century Fox. So they're actually doing that kind of stuff. So it's.
We're doing that, but now what I want to see is, I want to see the acquisition of dynamically generated 3D models of actors as they act in a set, so that you generate a 3D model of the environment, and that becomes the 3D space in which the user is navigating. And then you place the actors in that environment with cameras in every direction, observing them, taking that data, building it into a 3D model of the actors, and placing them in the virtual space for the viewer. So that as a viewer, there could be an argument going on between 2 people in a room, and you can walk around the room, stand next to them, go and stand somewhere else. You have an incredibly immersive experience. We have the technology for this. It's just difficult at the moment.
Interesting. Maxim, where can people go on the web to learn more about the kind of projects and things you're working on?
Well, I'm revamping my website, but maximjago.com is the place to go.
That's
quite a lot of people.
That's Maximjago, and Maxim Jago himself is the face you're looking at. Maxim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Lance. It's a real pleasure. Thanks
Take
for
care.
having me.
See you soon.
Maxim.
Bye-bye.
Still to come on The Buzz.
I want to invite you to become a member of our video training library. Our training library is unique in the industry. It includes more than 1,400 in-depth movies, each accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every movie in our library can be streamed to any internet-connected device. And it includes production and post-production, hardware, software, and techniques. It features current and past software releases from both Apple and Adobe, and unlike YouTube, all our training is complete. And unlike other websites, we focus exclusively on media production and post-production. Best of all, our memberships are affordable, starting at only $19.99 per month. Focused, in-depth, accessible, and complete. This is the training that you need to solve problems, master new software, and expand your business. I invite you to become a member today. Thanks.
Welcome to Tech Talk.
That's the backup process, also straightforward, but how do I get stuff back? You click on the R for restore, and you click on search. I want to search all of my archives, and I want to search for a file that has the name girl in it, and click on search. It says, I found this. I've got girl dancing on bridge. We've got girls on a carousel. I want to recover the girls on a carousel, so I check it. I could check multiple files, and then we can add it. Once it's been added, close this window, and now it said, go to find this file. It's stored at that location, think of it as a time code, on volume number 1 in the set called Backup 25. This is the stuff that we've done already. Click on Restore, and it says, go for it. Put in tape number 1, and you'll never guess. Right, it's got to cue the tape. So let's go fast forward and get the tape. Cue to the right spot and restore the file. The file itself that we're recovering is about 450 megabytes. At the speed the tape plays back, it's going to take 3 seconds to pull it off the tape. In fact, we can see that the restoration is complete, and this time I don't have to wait for the rewind, because notice that there's our girl on carousel laid to the hard drive, and there's the kids that we just recovered from the tape. Very cool. And the nice thing is that, yes, it takes a little bit of time, but I know with absolute certainty that that which is on my hard disk as the master, when it got laid to the tape, is accurate. And when it came back, it's equally accurate because of the verification process that all tape drives use. Filmmaker Max Votolato has lived in Los Angeles for 14 years, holding staff jobs at a number of major media companies around town. He's originally from South London, though, and a graduate of the London College of Communications Film and Video program. His latest film, Freeway City, is the story of Gardena, California, the one-time poker capital of the world. Hello, Max. Welcome.
It is?
Hi, Larry. How are you?
We are delighted to be talking with you. You know, I was just thinking, graduating from the London College of Communications is a big deal. What first got you interested in making films?
You know, I grew up in, like you said, South London. My neighbor as a kid was Terry Jones, who
Wow.
was a movie director, part of Monty Python. And, Terry's son Bill's around my age, we were in class together. So we took Terry's Super 8 camera out, and later his Video 8 camera, made our first films together in the neighborhood. And that was my first foray into filmmaking. And it's funny, other neighbors in this community were also involved with media. I had another neighbor named Lawrence Posma, who had a company named Yo-Yo Films. He made documentaries for Channel 4 in London. So as a teenager, I was his trainee, and I would go out on these shoots and learn about documentary filmmaking. The London College of Communications used to be called the London College of Printing when I went through, but it's not a printing school. It was just a media school. And they had a very documentary approach too. So somehow I've always been involved in documentary.
Well, your most recent film is Freeway City, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you've also done a number of other documentaries. What are some of your past projects?
There was a project called Italian Americans in Federal Hill. And similar to Freeway City, was about the community of Federal Hill. I was an associate producer on the project, and I shot many of the interviews. So that was almost a training ground for doing this project. It was one of the early inspirations to do a feature-length documentary like this. But more recently, I worked on a series called On Patrol, which was all about the cops in Santa Barbara. It was a police ride-along reality program, docu-style also. And it's now on Hulu, but you can see that it's another documentary project chronicling the Santa Barbara PD. And I've also worked on the series Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey. I was a unit manager on that show. And that was a great experience for learning how to make documentaries for broadcast and deal with the clearances and many of the other intricacies of getting films broadcast ready. Also, I produced a short film for Jason Clark, who's the producer of the TED movies. He was also a producer on Cosmos for the Breakthrough Initiatives Group. That was my most recent work.
What is it about documentaries that appeals to you, as opposed to narrative or fiction?
Well, I'm a big fan of the format because it's something I could do myself. I wanted to make movies, and I didn't have the financial resources to do a big narrative film or dramatization of a lot of the ideas I have. So I can be a one-man band and go out with my own camera and interview people, and then almost do the post-production along too. So it's an accessible format.
All right, well, let's talk about your newest project, which is Freeway City. And I love the subtitle, which is the one-time poker capital of the world. How can you not love a subtitle like that?
Yeah.
What was it about the story that attracted you?
Well, a lot of things. I wanted to make a film about Los Angeles. I was very inspired by the Mike Davis book, City of Quartz. And I was looking to tell a story about Los Angeles. And it's funny, I discovered Gardena inadvertently. I was making another film about the Southern California bail bonds community. And one of the bail agents who I was profiling, that guy named Francisco Rodriguez, has a company called Hollywood Bail Bonds. And it's not in Hollywood, it's in Gardena. So I started spending a lot of time in the area. And his unofficial office is a bar called the Desert Room on Gardena Boulevard. So this became one of our key hangouts, and it was instrumental to Freeway City because it started to build the network for the film in terms of the community and hearing the stories and the history of Gardena. I didn't know about Gardena. And when I would tell these stories to friends, things that I was picking up, nobody else had heard about Gardena, the history. There are some poker clubs there still now, but at one time it was a major poker destination with 6 clubs, and it was one of the only places in California you could play legally. So it's not just the poker story. It's the chronological history, probably 85 years of the city since it was incorporated, and I think it touches on a lot of things that are SoCal-centric, and it's an original untold story. So to me, it was just a great opportunity.
So what is the story? Give us the one-paragraph version of the plot.
Well, Gardena was many things to many people. In the early days, it's an agricultural community that was white and Japanese American. And then Pearl Harbor happened. There was the internment of the Japanese Americans. And the post-war Gardena started, made the city a very different place. Poker clubs came in. They'd already been there before the war, but that's when the poker community got very strong there. And then you have this whole battle that went on between the clubs. Then in the late 60s, the Japanese American story became very important to the city because Gardena became a gateway to Japanese corporations that wanted to come to the United States. So big corporations like Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Hitachi all made their entrance into the United States through Gardena because the city's leadership was Japanese American, they spoke the language, and they were able to impart our culture and customs and kind of show the Japanese the Japanese corporations coming into America how our society works. So it was a big selling point to them, and it became an area where they set up their formal U.S. headquarters in the early days.
So as you were making the film, how many people did you interview, and did you do it all yourself? What kind of gear? Talk about the production process for a minute.
I interviewed 35 people, and they were all about 2-hour interviews, 2 to 3 hour interviews each. I shot the film on a Sony FX1, which is an HD V camcorder, shooting a mini DV tape. My process when I do these interviews is I'd set the camera up and then I'd sit by the camera and do the interview. And so very simple. The interviewees were mic'd with a lavalier and it was wired to camera. I miss shooting the tape because solid state media is not always as reliable as those old tapes were. So very simple, and usually it was a sit-down interview, but on occasion I went out in the car or I'd be walking with someone. So again, very kind of run and gun style. And then I posted the film in Final Cut Pro mostly. In the beginning, I started in Final Cut Pro 5, and then the project graduated with the new releases, so I went to 6 and 7. And then ultimately brought it into Adobe Creative Cloud for the finishing. But at that point, the film was, really built. I didn't do an XML export to bring it into Premiere. I took it out as one big chunk of video, and then I did the sound work and my titles.
Now, one of the things I was very impressed with is you did not only a lot of B-roll, a lot of Ken Burns-style moves on still images, but a lot of historical footage. How did you find the historical footage, and what's the licensing process like?
It's key. It came from a lot of sources. Most of the footage was from the Prelinger archives, so it's public domain footage. And that's always the battle when you're doing these things, because you want to get away from the talking heads as much as possible and give the story momentum. And, there is no footage of these card clubs. Even now it's hard to bring a camera into a casino. It's always a problem. So, when I could, I'd find archival footage that matched the stories and gave me kinetics there. But then, many times it was just photographs that I'd have, or maps or headlines, and you'd have to make them move just to give the film some energy, and get away from those talking heads. I got my first round of photographs from the city of Gardena. They had done a project with a company called Arcadia Publishing, and they published these, you see them in Barnes and Nobles, these books about small towns. They'll put together a heritage community and they go across the country. So they've done a lot of the work compiling their pictorial history of the city. And then that gave me a head start. But even that book didn't have a lot of pictures of casinos or card clubs. So I was able through my interviewees to, get pictures. There was one interviewee in particular, Blaine Nicholson, who had been a publicist for Ernie Prim, who's kind of the central figure in the story of the card clubs. And he had an amazing archive of photographs that he just kind of scrapbooked, and he had, photo albums. And we shot a 3-hour interview at his home in San Diego. And at the end of it, he pulled out these books, and it was like everything I'd never seen before but had heard of. So I sat for 2 hours with a scanner at his coffee table, and we scanned these images together. And he would talk me through them and give me notes on who the people in the photographs were and what when these pictures were taken. And that was a huge resource. Toyota, the company Toyota, gave me access to their photo archive. A lot of it had to do with the early days of that company in the United States. So there was plenty of pictures of the area from them. And they even had film of their original cars being tested, old car commercials and things like that. There's a gentleman in the film, George Castro, who's a photographer for the city of Gardena, and many of his pictures are in the film too. I was lucky to work with some really talented After Effects artists who were able to make those pictures come alive. And that's a lot of what you see also in those sequences.
I noticed the film is online, and for people that are watching, they can see the website. It's freewaycity.org. But what are your plans for distribution? And are you hoping to make money on this, or is this a project for love?
Well, it's in the beginning, it was a different world in terms of distribution. And I had big dreams about coming out on DVD. This has been a long-time project. I've been doing this for on and off for 10 years. I started in 2005. And, I've worked these jobs and done this in my own time. So it's taken a long time to get it across the finish line. And, maybe it still does have a chance for distribution. To me at this point, it's more important for the film to be seen. And I noticed that filmmakers are starting to use Vimeo that way just to get, eyeballs on your film. And the outreach through Facebook and other social media tools, bringing an audience to the film is incredible. I'm finding my audience online now and getting their feedback, and it's a real pleasure.
So now that you've got this one on toward the finish line, what are you working on next, or you're just going to take a long nap?
No, I'm very excited about this project, and I feel that there's another film in there. There was so much that didn't make it into this cut of Freeway City that I'm very optimistic about another documentary, and maybe even a dramatization of some of these stories.
That could be fun. What website can people go to, people that want to see the film?
The film is on freewaycity.org, and you can follow the film also on Twitter at Freeway City Film, and my personal Twitter is @Votolato.
And Max Votolato is the producer, director, writer, researcher, camera, and editor for Freeway City. Max, thanks for talking with us. I wish you great success with the film.
Thanks
Take
very
care.
much. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
It's time for a BuZZ flashback. 5 years ago today.
In the Western world, we so often feel that we have excess income, excess resources. While we may have physical excess, they have spiritual excess. And by that, I mean just that so many people there have so little yet are content. It's a perspective shift, and it's a healthy perspective shift, just to really kind of keep things in mind of like, wow, we really do have it so good here, and not to contribute to the noise.
This was a BuZZ flashback.
Michael, it's been an interesting show, starting with Sue and looking at everybody else that's there.
What was really interesting is because you talked to two documentary filmmakers, and they talked about how many years they've been working on the documentary, and one was, 12 years, Sue was talking about, and this fellow has been working on 10 years. Do you know what the average time a documentary film maker needs to make a documentary?
More than a year?
Yes. It's about 7 years.
7?
7 years is the average from conception to end for a documentary filmmaker. And that's just, that's
really
a lot
have
of discipline.
You have to care. I mean,
Yeah, you have to care.
And you could see it in their faces. You see how they light up as
Yeah.
they were talking about?
I mean, what was Sue, 15 years, and this guy, 10 years?
Yeah, Sue was
The
12.
average time is about
12
7
years,
or
and they
12
haven't
years?
even finished editorial yet.
Yeah.
They've got at least a year of that.
Yep, you got to care about documentaries.
Yeah, that's why you don't necessarily get into it, as Max was saying. You don't get into it to make money, and because the distribution's going to change in the 10 years you're working on the project.
That's the thing. It is. It is going to change.
I want to thank our guests tonight that were making films, starting with Sue Lawson and Maxim Jago, both a director and a futurist, and then Max Votolato, a filmmaker. There's a lot of history, not only in the world, but in our industry, and it's all posted to our website, digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find hundreds of shows and thousands of interviews, and Mike stars in just about all of them. They're all online, all available to you today. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Text transcripts provided by Take One Transcription, and visit takeone.tv to learn how they can help you. Our producer, Serena Catania. Our engineering teams, led by Megan Paulos, includes Ed Golia, Keegan Guy, James Miller, and Brianna Murphy. On behalf of Mike Horton, a handsome guy on the other side of the table, my name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for joining us for the Digital Production Buzz.
The Digital Production Buzz was brought to you by Otherworld Computing, providing quality hardware solutions and extensive technical support to the worldwide computer industry since 1988. And by Blackmagic Design, creating revolutionary solutions for film, post-production, and television.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.